Thank you, Gib. Thank you, Gib, for your very kind and humorous words. I know how much work goes into preparing the introduction, and I truly appreciate it. I would like to say that I think a lot of those pictures were doctored, and that's what you call a fake introduction. You're a good man and a good friend, and will be an outstanding president of our society. And remember, you will get yours next year. It is hard for me to express what an incredible feeling of achievement it is to be standing before you as the 46th president of the Society for Clinical Vascular Surgery. So many great names in vascular surgery have preceded me that I hardly feel worthy of this honor. I remember being at the SCVS meetings as a fellow and young attending and experiencing the wonderful feeling of camaraderie. Vascular surgeons who I looked up to as giants of our specialty engaged me and other young surgeons in conversation, which I greatly appreciated, and whether by their words or actions, so inspired me. There really is no meeting or society quite like the Society for Clinical Vascular Surgery. I would like to take this opportunity to recognize those people who have had the greatest influence on me in my journey to the present. I will start with the two people who are my greatest mentors, my parents, from whom I learned the most important lessons about being a man, a husband, a father, and a professional. As you heard, my father was a kid from the streets of Hell's Kitchen in New York City, and although he never went to college, he wanted his children to be educated more than anything in the world. He ingrained in me that with determination and hard work, there is no obstacle that can stand in your way. My mother was a soft-spoken New Englander from Worcester, Mass. When she met my father, and with great courage, she moved to New York City after she and my dad married. She was nurturing and kind, and instilled in me a belief in the goodness of human nature and a love of education. Both my parents passed too early, and I wish they could have been here today. This is a recent picture of my family. As you heard, Allie is my oldest daughter. She is on my left and is the head of business innovation for a Manhattan advertising firm. Lizzie, the middle child, sitting in the middle, of course, is a nurse in liquid oncology at the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania and obtaining her master's degree in nursing administration at U of P. And Danielle, the baby, and yes, we still call her the baby, is a nurse on the postpartum unit at NYU with a master's in nursing. They are the lights of my life, and they bring me infinite joy. I am so incredibly proud of their accomplishments and even prouder of who they have become as people, and I hold my wife, Bonnie, 90% responsible. The first time I laid eyes on Bonnie, I knew I was going to marry her. I was an intern in surgery then, and we now have been married for more than 30 years. She is the love of my life and soulmate and has nurtured a wonderful family for which I am forever indebted to her. She has also unselfishly given me the time and encouragement to pursue my dreams. That said, I used to tell a joke in response to the question, "How long have you been married?" I would reply, after a brief pause, however many years it was, but it seemed like 5 minutes. That always elicited an "ah" or "that's so nice," and then I would say, after an appropriate pause, like 5 minutes underwater. But that was before Valentine's Day of 2016. That was the day that our lives came to a halt. That was the day that Bonnie received a heart transplant. And a day that reminded me of how wonderful it is to be part of a profession that produces miracles, and how much I still treasured my beloved wife. Now when someone asks me how long I've been married, I tell them 32 years, but it feels like 1 minute floating on water. I have a slightly different perspective now. My brother Charles and I are both vascular surgeons and are thought by many to be twins. We are not. He and my sister Sue are. Several years ago, Charles stopped doing arterial work and now has a successful venous practice in southern New Jersey. And although he looks happy, he has confided to me that he misses operating on cold legs and taking call. I have told him we can't all live the dream. My sister Sue and I are also very close. Even better is that she is my wife Bonnie's best friend. She is an educator for a nonprofit organization and is incredibly bright and very funny. Some say funnier than me. That's pretty funny. Dr. William Baker was my first mentor in surgery. He was my surgical preceptor and the chief of vascular surgery at the Loyola University Stritch School of Medicine, where I attended medical school. I admired his intellect, wit, and grace in and out of the operating room, and he made everything about vascular surgery interesting to me. Dr. Baker was a powerful incentive in my choosing vascular surgery as a vocation. Of all my mentors, Dr. Frank Vieth has had the greatest influence on my professional career. I was his fellow from 1988 to 1990. In those days, he was not the soft-spoken, gentle professor that I often hear him referred to as by residents and fellows at NYU today. In those days, he lived up to his nickname, the Shark. He would bite your head off before you could yell, "Get out of the water." That said, his attention to detail in and out of the operating room was extraordinary. He painstakingly watched and corrected, sometimes with four-letter medical jargon for clarity, every throw in of an anastomotic stitch until it was done perfectly. It was only after I became an attending and started teaching residents and fellows that I realized how much patience and care it took for him to do this. His work ethic is without parallel, as are his contributions to vascular surgery. We continue to speak often, and he has remained a great mentor for me throughout my career. I have known Enrico Asher, Larry Scher, and Russell Sampson for 30 years, and all have played an important part in my development as a vascular surgeon. I continue to learn from them all, and I consider all three good friends. Dr. Keith Calligaro is both a mentor and my closest friend. The first time I met Dr. Calligaro 3 decades ago, I was the first-year research fellow and he the second-year clinical fellow. He was exhausted and sleeping between cases with his face on the stone top of an old research bench in what was the fellow's office at Montefiore in those days. And there was a little drool coming out of the corner of his mouth. I knew then that greatness was in his future. Keith has gone on to an outstanding career in vascular surgery, one which I have tried to emulate in some small fashion. There is no friendship that I cherish more than his, but there are some things that do not change. Dahlia Plummer has been my partner for the past 10 years, and prior to that, she was my resident. She has always been wonderful to work with, and I can count on her to always have my back. I could ask for no better person to move through my professional life with than Dahlia. She is an excellent surgeon, a good person, and a true friend. Over the long tenure of my participation in the SCVS, I have developed many close and lasting friendships. There have been so many memorable times together that I can't even remember them all. Last year, as I was daydreaming, or rather nightmaring, about a theme for this presidential speech, I struggled to find a subject not yet considered or covered that I felt passionate about. It seemed like we have talked about all the important topics already. Then I had an epiphany. I would talk about what we usually don't talk about. No, not some bodily odor, but rather the relative anonymity of our specialty to the lay public, patients, and even other physicians.
What we got?
Richard David Kimball, vascular surgeon. What the hell is that?
Somebody that makes more money than you.
Now, I am sure that this scene from the 1993 film The Fugitive resonates with almost everyone sitting here today. What is disheartening is that if they remade it today, they would not have to change the dialogue. I started my career as a vascular surgeon almost 30 years ago when our specialty was relatively new, just starting to find its legs, so to speak. It was therefore understandable to me why many physicians and patients were unsure of what a vascular surgeon was. Regrettably, here we are 3 decades later, and other than the amount and color of Sam Money's hair, little has changed. except now it is less understandable and a good deal more frustrating. Constraining vascular surgeons professionally in everything from departmental and service line leadership to appropriate procedural reimbursement and even jeopardizing our future as a distinct specialty. Why are we still not recognized as the go-to physicians for the treatment of vascular disease? Why are we still fighting a battle for recognition that never seems to end? When will it change, and how can we change it? Will our specialty survive? These are the questions that I think discomfit and challenge every vascular surgeon, whether in private, employed, or academic practice, and about which I have thought a great deal. Patients can't know the best person to help them as a vascular surgeon if they don't know who or what that is. So today I want to examine the issue of anonymity of our specialty through a look at two potentially significant factors: our lack of an independent board of vascular surgery and our need for branding. Now, there appears to be no more controversial issue in vascular surgery than whether or not we should pursue independent board status. Please understand that my goal in raising this is not to be contentious, but rather to foster honest and factual discussions about it. To do that, we need to understand what has happened over the last 25 years regarding efforts at independence. I believe that important lessons were learned from this endeavor, which will help us in the future if we decide to go down this path again. In 1990, Dr. H. Burnell Wheeler was the first to pose the question, should vascular surgery become an independent specialty? In a presentation he gave at the Critical Issues Forum of the SVS. At that time, there were only 1,045 surgeons with added or special qualifications in vascular surgery, nowhere near enough to handle the more than 500,000 procedures done, vascular procedures done in non-federal acute care hospitals that year. Even so, fewer than 10% of general surgeons in 1989 did 10 or more index vascular cases in vascular surgery each year, and 70% did not do a single aortic aneurysm. At the same time, less than 10% of vascular surgeons did 10 or more of the most common general surgical procedures. Despite these findings, Dr. Wheeler concluded that, organizationally, for purposes of accreditation and certification, there is no reason for vascular surgery to break off from the main body of general surgery. 6 years later, in Dr. Frank Veith's well-known and prescient 1996 SCVS Presidential Address, Charles Darwin and Vascular Surgery, he outlined 3 steps vascular surgery needed to take to advance and preserve our specialty or face certain extinction. First, vascular surgeons must acquire endovascular skills. Second, we must form multidisciplinary vascular disease centers. And third, we must change the relationship between vascular surgery as represented by the SVS and SCVS at that time and the bodies that govern it. His address concluded with the thought that Darwin would predict that vascular surgery would evolve into its own specialty with its own board and residency review committee, and that would most benefit vascular patients. Later that same year, the American Board of Vascular Surgery, the ABVS, was incorporated by the 2 major vascular societies, the SVS and the North American ISCVS. Its purpose was to have a dialogue with the American Board of Surgery and its Residency Review Committee about the training of vascular surgeons and possible application to become a member board of the American Board of Medical Specialties, or the ABMS. It is only with recognition by the ABMS that a specialty can become an independent examining board with its own American College of Graduate Medical Education, that is the ACGME, approved Residency Review Committee. In a 1997 survey sent to all practicing vascular surgeons in the United States and Canada, 91% of all ABS-credentialed vascular surgeons favored the formation of an independent board of vascular surgery. The American Board of Surgery rejected this idea. Instead, The ABS created the Vascular Surgery Subboard in 1998, later termed the Vascular Surgery Board of the ABS, with the mandate to advise the ABS on all issues related to vascular surgery. The ABS selected members of the subboard as well as the new chair of the board, with some input from the two major vascular societies. And although vascular leadership recommended that the new VSB be allowed to manage all issues regarding training and certification of vascular surgeons, this suggestion was also rejected by the ABS. Despite a second survey of the members in the year 2000, which showed continued support for an independent board, the majority of societal leadership voted for a 2-year moratorium on additional funding for the American Board of Vascular Surgery, and further, for continued support of the relatively, at that time, unempowered Vascular Surgery Board of the ABS. This was a divided and ugly era for vascular surgery, pitting the leaders of our society and specialty against one another and the wishes of membership. I have come across some rare archive video of one of those early meetings.
We are met at this chosen ground to settle for good and all.
It was an ugly time. In 2002, after some of the infighting had resolved, the executive councils of the major vascular societies came together with the Association of Program Directors in Vascular Surgery in support of moving forward with submitting an application to the ABMS for an independent board of vascular surgery. Following the application to the ABMS, the response from the ABS was swift and highly unsupportive. In a memo to all ABS members, the American Board of Surgery Executive Director Walter Ritchie came out firmly against an independent board as not in the best interests of general surgery, vascular surgery, the board movement, or the public. Without the support of the ABS, the response to the ABVS application by the American Board of Medical Specialties was not unexpected. Where did that leave us? Having lived through this epoch, I can tell you there was true concern as to whether our specialty was going to survive. The impact of our lack of autonomy in vascular training was reflected in steadily falling fellowship applications in the early 2000s, leading to 20% of available slots going unfilled by 2005. In response, in 2004, the ABS was given permission by the ABMS to grant a primary certificate in vascular surgery, not independence, but the only primary certificate given by the ABS besides that in general surgery. That meant that training in general surgery was no longer required to achieve board certification in vascular surgery. It also allowed for the development of new and different training paradigms, such as the 05 integrated vascular residency, which is flourishing today. In exchange for the primary certificate, however, the ABS expected the American Board of Vascular Surgery not to pursue an appeal of the prior ABMS decision to deny membership and therefore independence. Although all parties supported the American Board of Surgery primary certificate in vascular surgery, they also agreed that this should not be a final destination, but rather a way station on the road to independent board status. In a fourth and final survey sent out in May of 2004, members of the vascular surgery community supported this concept. Thus, with the support of the SVS board, although divided, and almost unanimous support of the APDVS, the quest for independence continued. To the disappointment of many, the independent ABVS appeal was rejected by the American Board of Medical Specialties. Given continued opposition from our sponsoring board, the American Board of Surgery, there was little chance of success. More than 10 years have passed since that last failed attempt at achieving board independence for our specialty, and some things have changed since then. The leadership of both vascular surgery and the American Board of Surgery is different. Many of the former icons of surgery who were trapped in the constructs and mores of a previous era and opposed vascular independence have retired from leadership. But some things haven't changed. Some still believe that we have an obligation to train general surgical residents in open arterial surgery. An abstract will be presented at the prestigious American Surgical Association meeting in April addressing these issues. However, in the abstract, the office failed to mention that there are not enough open arterial cases to adequately train vascular residents and fellows for whom these cases are critical, let alone general surgical residents for whom they are not. So perhaps it is time to revisit our lack of control of our vascular surgery training programs and the pursuit of independent board status. In November of the 44th year of our Vascular Lord Symposium, VEITH, or 2017, however you wish to tell time, I participated in a double-secret meeting of concerned vascular surgeons to consider once again reviving the American Board of Vascular Surgery and again pursuing membership in the American Board of Medical Specialties. Representatives of both academia and private practice were in attendance. I asked many of the participants how they thought an independent board would improve their circumstance. Their answers included issues of compensation and reimbursement, departmental and service line leadership, control of our training programs, greater control of competing specialties, and enhanced specialty recognition by the lay public. I would like to address each of these as it relates to board independence. I will start with reimbursement. The physician work scale of the original relative-based value scale, in which every CPT code was converted into relative value units, RVUs, was developed by Chow and co-workers at Harvard in 1992. Little attention was paid to vascular surgical procedures, with only 6 procedures surveyed. Compounding this cluster flower, the Harvard folks didn't identify vascular surgery as a distinct specialty, and the surveys were sent to surgeons who may have had little or no vascular surgical experience and were most likely general surgeons. This graph from a paper by Bob Zwolak, the then head of the Government Relations Committee of the SVS and ISCVS, published in JVS in 1997, shows the RVUs per minute for vascular procedures as compared to other surgical procedures. 8 of the 9 lowest RVUs per minute were assigned to vascular operations. The battle for proper reimbursement has continued ever since by SVS representatives Bob Zwolak and more recently Sean Roddy, as well as others. The SVS will continue to represent us in this and other governmental issues, as this is not the function of a board. On the other hand, had there been an independent board from the outset, we would have been represented by vascular surgeons rather than general surgeons, and the RVUs per minute would surely have been more favorable. Government reimbursement strategies have changed significantly since then and will continue to do so. It is debatable as to whether remaining under the umbrella of the ABS, which represents us as well as other subspecialties in surgery, would be to our advantage or even matter. I would still argue that a singularly focused board would serve us better overall, even a relatively small one. Regarding hospital or medical school departmental leadership, some believe that if we had an independent board, we would have our own departments of vascular surgery and no longer be subservient to the chairs of surgery, who are in most instances either general or cardiothoracic surgeons. In average size at smaller medical institutions in the U.S., however, it is unlikely that would have any bearing on organizational structure because of the administrative and other costs associated with establishing a department. In academic and or larger hospitals, though, separate departments of vascular surgery would undoubtedly increase the level of respect for vascular surgical leadership by the hospital administration and other department chairs. Over time, the elevated presence would lead to greater awareness of our specialty, at least within medicine. It might also improve the chances of vascular surgeons being given greater consideration for chair positions in surgical departments where there is no Department of Vascular Surgery. With respect to service line leadership, it appears to me that cardiologists are most often selected. I suspect that the sheer numbers of cardiologists and their bigger economic clout is the reason, notwithstanding our excellent contribution margin to most hospitals' bottom line. Would greater consideration be given to vascular surgeons if we had an independent board? I would suggest that it might, and that service line leadership selection process might be more greatly influenced by the chair of an economically robust Department of Vascular Surgery than that of a division chief. There's the challenge of other specialists entering what we consider our domain and performing vascular interventions. Although having an independent board would not prevent that, had we had an independent board 20 years ago, it might have made a difference with respect to credentialing of interventional specialists and having adequate numbers of vascular surgeons today. It seems that in most medical institutions, guidelines for credentialing in vascular interventions are not recognized across specialties. Alternatively, guidelines developed by the SCVS and supported by the gravitas of an independent board might garner greater acceptance by hospital credentialing committees and be applied to all interventionalists wishing to perform these procedures, no matter their specialty of origin. Another fundamental reason why other specialists have entered the vascular space is one of numbers. Simply put, not enough supply of specialists and plenty of demand for vascular procedures. Our population is aging rapidly, and with it, the incidence of vascular disease. Back in 1996, Jim Stanley predicted that without the ability to increase the number of vascular surgical trainees, there would be more patients with vascular disease than there would be vascular surgeons to treat them. A more recent paper by Williams and Ferries, looking out to the year 2030, confirms these findings. The lack of supply has stemmed largely from our lack of control over residency and fellowship training. As you can see from this 2015 American Association of Medical Colleges report, we train many fewer residents than interventional cardiology and interventional radiology. Previous mandates by the American Board of Surgery, RRC, to provide general surgery residents with a significant operative experience in vascular surgery at the expense of training adequate numbers of real vascular surgeons has created a void in vascular disease care which has been filled by non-surgical specialists, often for the economic opportunity which it provides rather than the need to deliver best care. In a presentation by Andy Schanzer at the 2017 Association of Program Directors in Vascular Surgery meeting, he showed that in 2015 there were almost 8 applicants, and these are high-quality applicants, for every 0.5 vascular surgery residency position available. The decision to increase the number of residency positions and avert the predicted shortages in vascular surgical manpower should rest solely in our hands. It does not. Approximately 1 year ago, Vivian Gatton wrote an informative article for the Vascular Specialist outlining the current composition and activities of the Vascular Surgery Board of the ABS. Without question, great strides have been made in addressing many of the needs of vascular surgery through the Vascular Surgery Board of the ABS. Nevertheless, we still do not have our own RRC, nor complete control of the composition of the members of the VSB, the chair of which must have both current certifications in vascular surgery as well as general surgery, and who is still selected by the ABS. To train vascular surgeons and manage our profession to meet growing demand with high-quality care is the most crucial reason to have an independent board. Absent this control, we have limited ability to guide our own destiny, as you can see from all the challenges I've just outlined. Russell Sampson noted in a recent editorial in the Vascular Specialist that every year U.S. News and World Report puts out a list of best hospitals by specialty that includes cardiology, CT surgery, ENT, and others, but not vascular surgery. Sampson's suppositions that this would be an unlikely occurrence if vascular surgery were a member of the ABMS rather than a subboard of the ABS. He concluded with a pertinent question, not why we should have an independent board that would allow us to control the most important aspects of our profession and afford us greater recognition, but rather, why not? I would further add that we do not know what potential new and disruptive changes await vascular surgery in the future. Who would have predicted the endovascular revolution? Would it not be in our best interest if our ability to respond to these changes is solely our own? That's a rhetorical question. One concern of having an independent board is the associated cost of running it. Is it prohibitive? To find out, I spoke with the COO of the American Board of Allergy and Immunology, an ABMS member board similar in size to our own. When they first became an independent board in 1971, they shared office space with the American Board of Internal Medicine and leased their employees to save money. Now they have their own space with 7 employees, supported with annual membership dues and an annual maintenance of certification fee. An ABVS could do the same. With this history and these challenges in mind, if we are going to move forward with seeking an independent American Board of Vascular Surgery, then vascular leaders, the Executive Council of the SVS, must be united in their efforts to achieve this goal and obtain support from the American Board of Surgery, without which we are not likely to be successful. If there are those in leadership, all of whom I know well and trust, these are good people, but if there are those in leadership who do not believe it is in our best interest to move forward with pursuing an independent board, then they must explain their reasons clearly for the membership. Transparency is critical and something that was missing when we went down this road in the not-too-distant past. In the event that we were to achieve independent board status, would that solve our problem of anonymity with the public? Possibly with time, but very unlikely in the short term. So then, how can we distinguish ourselves from other specialties that claim to do what we do? How can we make the public and referring physicians aware of what vascular disease is and why we, vascular surgeons, are the most prepared of all physicians to treat it? I would suggest then that we need to commit to some hard work through our societies to focus on education, the branding and marketing of our specialty. So where does our brand stand now in the public domain? In an informal survey which we conducted at public venues, we found that only 22% of people correctly identified what a vascular surgeon was. Almost as many thought a vascular surgeon was a cardiologist. 70% perceived a cardiovascular specialist as a heart doctor, and only 15% thought it was someone who treated circulatory problems. Most people thought that cardiologists managed PAD, aortic aneurysms, and carotid disease, especially those in the age group most likely to have these diseases. The term brand takes its roots from the Old West. That mark seared on the hides of cattle to designate ownership. Of course, the concept has evolved greatly since then, but its implicit meaning is still the same. A brand is something that marks your company or service, in our case specialty, as unique. Our cultural culture is dominated by brands. When we see a familiar brand, we understand the meaning without having to hear the whole story. All these logos are delivering a message. A brand should be an instant aha. It should require very little thought and contemplation. To have an effective brand, we must start by describing ourselves clearly. This is not a trivial issue and also not easy to fix. There is a word that has become part of our lexicon, a remnant of a prior era, prior to the origins of our specialty, but that today serves to obfuscate and confuse both the lay public and many physicians. That word, cardiovascular, a conjunction of the words cardiac and vascular, has become a marketing term, a catch-all for any disease that pertains to the heart and, on occasion, the vasculature. as well as to erroneously define who we are as in cardiovascular specialists. It is a misleading term used by pharmaceutical companies to sell drugs and by misguided hospital administrators to sell services to the inexpert lay public. We must insist that this word not be used by those on whom we have some professional influence whenever and wherever possible. It is crucial that the lay public and referring physicians see the word vascular often and unfettered or preceded by the word cardio when referring to us and the diseases we treat. Once we describe and define our brand, we have to communicate it. We have to market our brand. Fortunately, there are more ways from low-tech to high-tech than ever before to get our message out. In one low-tech example, the Eastern Vascular Society's Committee for Community Physicians and Outreach, which I chair, is currently testing distributing via direct mail an informational magazine called ViaWare to patients and referring physicians. Recipients will be surveyed to evaluate the effectiveness of this mode of messaging. The ViaWare magazine was developed by Manny Maida and generously loaned to the EVS. A more ambitious national branding effort in which small pieces of content are sent out through different mediums and to different target audiences can be led by the SVS. With digital advertising and social media, there are multiple outlets through which we can inform, educate, and teach audiences to associate vascular disease solutions specifically with our specialty. There is more ability to reach more people in targeted ways than ever before and for less money than traditional media advertising. But traditional advertising still matters. Here's an example of a powerful TV ad communicating branding. Should we create a TV commercial like MSK? Maybe, maybe not. Because of all the other competition from other digital and social network mediums, network TV is not nearly as expensive as it used to be, but it's still an investment. Let's look at Tesla, one of the best known and respected brands there is today. This is how much Tesla spends on marketing their cars, $0. And yet their brand has become synonymous with integrity, forward-thinking, the future, and reliability. They did this by disrupting the typical means for marketing, placing their car showrooms in malls and employing social media and not using TV or print media. Last year, Tesla held a contest for fans to create ads for their vehicles. Tesla received videos from around the world. Here's the edited winning ad, which can be seen on the Tesla website as well as multiple other online and social media sites. Also, the contest received free TV and print news coverage. We can do this too. But first, we need a message. I ask you all, what is our message? Yes, we are the experts in vascular disease, but that is only part of it. I am not suggesting that I have created the message, although I would love to do that. That is the collective task of all of us. And whatever that message is, we need to begin delivering it as often and through as many mediums as our funds will allow. The SVS is the voice of our specialty and has critical roles in government relations, reimbursement, coding, and establishing practice guidelines. The SCVS represents the clinical vascular surgeon and is well suited to partner with the SVS in establishing branding and marketing strategies. I think that establishing an ad hoc committee to investigate this further would be very worthwhile. We are a small specialty, but being small is not why we can't do branding. It is why we need to do branding. And branding is part of the bigger effort to secure the future of our profession. The children have grown. I still love them and want to protect them, but I can't tell them what to do anymore. God knows I've tried. What I can do is support them emotionally and help them when I can. Vascular surgery has grown up too. It is time for us to be on our own and do the things we need to do to have our own identity. We need to move out of the basement, even though the rent is cheap, and into our own place. We need to forge our futures by ourselves, for ourselves, with the help of our friends and the surgical family at large along the way. I, like all of you, love our chosen profession, and I truly believe in my heart, my arteries, and veins, that if we act together and focus our energies on what I have discussed with you today, standing on our own, delivering our message, then the future of vascular surgery as a profession and as a service to patients everywhere is extremely bright. It has been a distinct pleasure and privilege to serve as your 46th president of the Society for Clinical Vascular Surgery, an honor which I have cherished and will never forget. Thank you.